If you had me at gunpoint and forced me to choose one Wii U game that hasn't gotten a Switch port to get one, on the grounds that after that came out no other games would get ported, I would choose Xenoblade Chronicles X in a heartbeat. Now coming from me, that shouldn't be a surprise since, it's my favorite series and the one I get money for talking about, but with the possible exception of Pikmin 3, that's actually the choice that most people would be making at this point. A huge chunk of the great Wii U games, or at least ones that originated on the system, so ignoring things like the Zelda remakes, have been ported to the Switch already, and X is one of the last ones left. Unfortunately, we already have some news from Monolith Soft themselves saying that if they wanted to bring X to the Switch, they would more likely try to go for a reimagining, to bring the game a lot closer to its original vision, so a lot closer to a remake than a straight port. They also said that that would take a lot more time and money than they currently have access to, so that's not anything they have in the pipeworks right now. We could get another studio being hired, like they did for Xenoblade 3D, to just make a straight port, get rid of the gamepad features, and shove everything onto your Joy-Cons or Pro Controller, and that's possible, but I don't think it's very likely. Thankfully though, we do already have confirmation that they're working on the next Xenoblade game, and while we don't have any idea what it is, it could be a follow-up to 1 and 2, it could be X2, or it could be a new universe entirely just using the IP and gameplay style, the majority of fans are hoping that it is going to be some sort of follow-up to X. In this video, I'm gonna take things a bit easy because the last one was the huge Onto spectacular, and just talk about a bunch of things that I would want to see in a Xenoblade Chronicles X2. Spoilers for the original game because I'm talking about ideas for a direct sequel, and other than that, let's go! Number one is kind of a twofold thing. I want them to change up the setting a bit from the continents of Mira we had in the first game, as well as have a bit bigger focus on the main story. Now, the reason X's main story wasn't the greatest was because they wanted it to be very open world, open-ended, and the side quests and character interactions were the main thing. Those were great, but also the main story was kind of not great. Thing is, if you look at the secret files, Art of Mira, all that stuff, they had a lot of plans and stuff in there that ended up getting completely scrapped because they decided to go for the more gameplay-centric and also some kind of intermingling with the idea of doing it an online game. There were a bunch of ideas for X that did get coalesced into a great game, but one of the things that fell at the wayside was the story. On the bright side, that means there's still a huge amount of story concepts that they didn't ever use, and they could just plop straight into X2, like how Torna was a scrapped plot for the base game of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. At risk of getting a little fanfiction-y, I do actually have a pretty good way they could pull this off. In the original game, we get a few hints that the White Whale wasn't the only Ark ship from Earth to make it to Mira. One side quest literally has you finding a piece of lifehold that does not come from the whale, had to have come from another ship, and I believe there's also some mention of communications and transmissions in other languages, which aren't English, and yeah, LA is LA, and the actual cast is pretty multicultural and multinational, but I'm pretty sure they're all speaking English, so that would have to come from somewhere else. Again, in the art book, we get rumblings of NLA was originally supposed to be New Tokyo. And while I think they explicitly mention either New Paris or French communications in the side quest, I'm gonna just call the other city New Tokyo, because if they did that, first it would be Japan putting Japan in a game, which they love doing, and second, they would just be able to reuse ideas they had from the concept stage of the original X, and that would make it a bit easier and faster to develop, so I think it would make more sense for them to go with that. So the entire story doesn't have to be a direct follow-up to the original X. You could have some of it about a different city landing on a different part of Mira and going through different types of struggles, exploring different areas, and just that's how you shove all of your new concepts and new ideas into X2, and then you can also have a second story focusing around the original cast, possibly minus Cross, because I want to talk about the Avatar a bit later. That's an actual follow-up to the original X, following in Elma's reveal, the lifehold thing, everyone being stuck in their MIMS and that stuff. We actually get this amazing concept piece of the planet Mira that shows the whole world split into these different sections, and you can see multiple cities in there. It looks really cool. If they never use this, I'm probably stealing this idea for a world of my own that I have had in my mind for a while. So, I just really like that imagery. But that's basically how you do it. The 5 continents you get in Mira aren't very big compared to the whole planet, and are extremely isolated via the oceans. You don't have to have the planet as actually split into different chunks, but you could just have they land in completely different areas. The Tokyo crew could be fighting off the ghosts, the other race that was part of the battle above Earth, and that kind of stuff, so that's how you differentiate from the Ganglion. Or they could just have other indigens and stuff like that. Maybe while Telethio was a part of the story for the NLA crew, they could instead focus on the Igrolith, the other kind of ultrafauna, and that's a big natural enemy. Maybe they could just be fighting nature. Maybe they could run into some other hostile race that natives of Mira. Maybe L's species isn't present because L is the only one living there, and they're actually from another continent. And L originally looked demonic, and his name is an anagram of Lucifer, so maybe the rest of them are very devilish and evil or something. There's plenty of possibilities with that. Of course, the original story would continue, and while yeah, having 2 split campaigns to get the same story has never really worked in games in the past, my idea for it is pretty simple. Basically, when you're outside of specific sequences, you could swap between the 2 settings whenever you want. You go on the menu, there's an option that's literally just swap, and then you swap. And in order to make you play both of them, obviously you have completely different party members. What I would do is, story-wise, have the new Tokyo people get their bodies back, or never have been in MIMS in the first place. So, they're human, but the NLA crew are Mimiosomes, so you'd have actual different gameplay mechanics there. Separate human and Mimiosome into 2 separate races, because robots are not people, in case you didn't know. And there'd be definite gameplay ideas there, have different classes available to different people, that kind of thing. And also have them team up with different races, explore different areas, that kind of stuff. Maybe different type of Skells? I'm not really sure about that. But basically, unless you're inside what's basically the equivalent of a story chapter or affinity mission, you could just press a button, swap to the other party whenever you want, but at the same time have progressing with one group be different than progressing with the other group. Basically, sometimes story progress for one group will be locked until you get to a certain story point with the other group, just based on things that are happening at the same time. Maybe even have, I'm going to just say Team Elma, because she's probably going to be the main character of the NLA side if you do this. Have Team Elma start out at a higher level. All the returning characters are higher level than the other new Tokyo characters who you're probably going to start the game with. So they're already accomplished. That team already has access to Skells, that kind of thing. And maybe just have a modified version of the original 5 continents of Mira fully explorable from the beginning once you get access to the Elma side. And there are other story objectives and things you could do. Throw in some more Nopon towns, throw in stuff like that. Just add more stuff to the original area of Mira. Do something like, oh, the original X only brought you to level 60, but all the other Xenoblade games cap at 99, so we'll just add enough stuff to the original areas of Mira to make it enough to have a game that brings you to 99. So have like 40 levels worth of content added to that area in addition to modified versions of what was already there. So you have that, you swap between the 2 parties doing their stories simultaneously, and then you might get a hint, because I started playing the Golden Sun series, and I was gonna be like, yeah, I got most of the way through the first game, and then Christmas happened, and I got a bunch of games then, and then I decided I'm gonna binge the entire Kingdom Hearts series, so I could finish 3 before spoilers become prevalent. So I also want to go back and replay the original game, and then play the Lost Age, and record them both, because I want to do videos on Golden Sun, because I liked it, but I didn't go in spoiler-free, so I know about a kind of thing that happens at the end of the second game, where your party gets bigger, and yeah, I think you know where I'm going now. I want to do that. While the New Tokyo side of the campaign would be about a different group of characters, you learning, getting used to them, getting close to them, experiencing the same sort of struggle for survival that you had in the first game, because that's a very important element of X, I believe. The Elma side would be a bit more triumphant, I guess, slightly less dark, maybe, and more of a, okay, we're alive, we still don't really know what's going on, but we're stable now, we have our friends, we're making a society, we've made our home on Mira, let's actually try to solve the mysteries of this planet. Let's thrive, let's explore. So the theme would be more figuring out secrets than struggling to survive, and that would probably involve, yeah, exploring more of the planet's surface. So at one point, once you get somewhere in the Elma story, you just stop making progress with that. There's no new story objectives there. There's like all the side stuff that you'd normally have with the party members there and that kind of thing. And eventually you unlock on the Tokyo side one longer than average story mission sometime relatively soon after getting your Skells. Like, it would explicitly say before you accept it, this is going to be longer than the typical story mission. You won't be able to accept other stuff or swap to the other city for a little bit, like for a long time, longer than usual. And you do it, and it's basically the equivalent of the Invasion of NLA arc in the first game, but instead you're combating whatever the enemy force is for this game over the ocean, trying to keep them away from New Tokyo. Now, obviously, if the city's landlocked, this wouldn't work, and it would just be like over plains or something near the city, but not in it. I don't know why that's important, that's just how I imagine the set piece working. Whatever. So, you're fighting them, you go back and forth, you have a couple cutscenes, a couple fights against various enemy troops, probably a mini-boss or something, like some named character that you encountered before, but you're actually fighting them this time, you don't have to kill them, whatever. But eventually, it becomes obvious that they're losing the battle, everyone's like, oh crap, there's gotta be the one bold guy who's like, yeah, I'm gonna ram my Skell into them and detonate it, taking out as many people as I can. At least, I gotta die anyway, so my sacrifice will be worth something. But then, over the radio, you hear something. You hear a familiar voice. And I don't really know what to say, but it's like something along the lines of, don't worry, you're not alone. Humanity is stronger than this. We will survive. And boom, there you go, over the horizon or something, you see the entire force of NLA, like the final cutscene of the first game worth of Skells, but more, because they have more Xeno allies than previously, so like, there's gotta be Rothians and Skells or something. I'm gonna talk later about having more races playable, so suffice to say there are gonna be more people than there were before. And they all show up, and what was basically originally the New Tokyo people retreating to the city now turns into a pincer movement where the enemy forces are, like, trapped between two gigantic, very annoyed groups of humans, and also one of the groups of humans has a lot of backup. So, first off, the characters would be, I don't know who the main character this one would be, like, maybe based off of Reina Sakuraba, the intended protagonist of X from the beginning, something like that. But they're gonna be like, what's going on? These are people that I don't recognize. Those are Skell serial numbers that I've never heard. This is really weird. But the bad guys are getting beaten up now, so let's do that. Let's just work our way towards them. So you do a couple fights. I guess you might get one on the Elma side or something too, because like the player will know who it is, and it would just be Elma, Lynn, probably Mia, because I really hope she has a bigger role on any future X game, and then some fourth party member. It could just be whatever 4 party members you happen to have in your Elma party when you last switched away from them or something like that. I don't know. But that happens. And then eventually, obviously, you're going to have them unite together. And this is a big thing, because first off, it's the characters you've known and loved from the first X game. Second off, it's the new characters you've just gotten to know and love from the second X game that are also finding their salvation and finding the characters from the first game. So it's like, oh yeah, we're going to see those interactions. That's going to be pretty cool. And the idea is that, okay, yeah, some explorers, in the time when we weren't able to play as the Elma group, at the beginning of the story arc, they decided to go far, they discovered these other continents where Tokyo landed, they were like, hey, that's a human person city. Then they realized, oh god, that's an army, let's call in everyone, we need to save our people. So that happens, and then, I don't know if you knew this about me, but Uncontrollable is my favorite song in the Xenoblade series. So, obviously, once the two groups get together and they're like actually fighting side by side, I would imagine that maybe there would be different battle themes for the two different parties and new tyrant themes for both of them, not reusing Uncontrollable, because if you do that, obviously you have to have Uncontrollable play in this next fight. Come on. And then in that fight, it's not just, oh, you choose 2 people from each party. It's you have all 8 on the field at the same time. That's the gimmick. 8-person parties. After this happens, obviously there's like they unite up, they form teams. Blade probably didn't exist in whatever the new city is, so they'd be inducted or associated with that and form an alliance. They figure out something. You can then have access to explore both worlds as both parties. You can make a party comprised of people from both groups. You can make an 8-person party. You can do all that sort of stuff. There's new side quests for new characters in the old areas, old characters in the new areas, all that sort of stuff. The story could do kind of whatever from there. You could even just have, oh, there's a new enemy group on the Elma side that's also the original enemy group the Tokyo side fights, and that's how that works. And they just team up to fight a common enemy and, like, assert themselves over Mira once and for all, like, hey, we're gonna live. Screw you guys. That kind of thing. Could be anything like that, but as long as you get that moment happening, and again, the gimmick is it's X, but with an edited, more modernized, better, hopefully improved battle style, but also the gimmick is 8 players. That includes online, because, I don't know, like, if you could get 4-player Smash working fine online, which is sometimes a tall order, but if you could have 8-player Splatoon working fine, you could probably have 8-player cooperative Xenoblade working fine too, because the AI is going to react the same way no matter what happens. It still knows what's going on. Like, as long as the AI could be lagged, but you're fighting against AI cooperatively, not against other people, so you don't need to connect more than 8 people in as long as everything's programmed well, which I trust Monolith on that front. So, 8-person party. I'm thinking that until you beat the main story, you can only have 4 people from a given city in at the same time to, like, force you to experiment with different party comps and that kind of stuff. But it sounds cool. Just 8 Skells taking on even bigger bosses than before. That's also another way you can introduce stronger enemies, where it's ones like, yeah, there's no way we'd be able to take this before, but now we got another city's worth of friends. And the new Tokyo people are like, wow, you ran into other sentient races and made friends with them. We should probably do that too. Let's get our guys. Let's throw them in Skells. Let them join up. And that, I think, segues nicely into make more races playable. X has some really cool races. And guess which ones are playable? Humans in robot bodies, L, and Celica. L looks cool, but he doesn't have any special abilities beyond a normal blade. And Celica is basically human-looking. Her partner, Rock, is a pacifist, but he's at least not human in appearance. He looks different. He would be more interesting to play because he's not just another human. So my way of doing this would be, first off, diminish the avatar's role in the story. Don't have them be a main character. Make them more of a multiplayer focused thing, because you'd want to have multiplayer stuff in here. A lot more multiplayer exclusive missions, basically 8-player raid boss type things. That kind of stuff would be cool, but having an avatar be the main character of the story very much detrimented the plot of the first X game. So I'd rather it be, I guess, like an anthology thing where it's like an everybody story thing. I'd love for you to not have to go around and meet each individual party member to put them in your party, so you could just swap around which characters are active and which aren't, but from a bigger list. So you do something like that, and then depending on who's in the party, you can access different missions or something like that. Like Elma, Lynn, Mia, they all have to be in the party for story missions, and they're the main trio, but at the same time, maybe there's a mission of Gwyn, Arena, and Elle doing something where you can only have those 3 in the party, and they go do their own thing, and it's part of their story. So that's one way to do it. You could just require Cross to be in the party, but not have them actually be in the cutscenes or something. It's just like there's someone tagging along. So if them sit in the background, no decision making or anything, it's just you watching there. But even if Cross isn't important to the main story, obviously you'd have people in NLA mention who they are, talk about how they were important, they helped us do that kind of thing, but they're off on their own mission now, and it's like some elite group tasked by Elma to go do very specific, very important things, and that's basically the multiplayer missions. You, in your universe, are that important person, and your teammates are just other people that were assigned to that team that just weren't in the first game for whatever reason. And it's like that for everyone in your group's perspective, that kind of thing. But regardless, I don't think Cross needs to be an important part of the story, which means that you don't have to worry about making every party member something Cross can do, because that was the other problem. There was no incentive to play as party members that weren't Cross, because you could make their exact loadout just by customizing your own avatar. The more races you add, the more interesting it could be. I would say Mimiazome as a race just operates with the exact same class system as the first game, but obviously expanded a bit, changed to reflect the different gameplay style of this new game, because it's got to be updated at least a little bit, because that's how video games work. Maybe just everyone has to be one class, but maybe they are locked to a class tree instead of one, and they get more arts and they have more room to grow as they level up, that kind of thing. And that's the Mimiazome race, same class system as the first game, but then playable Nopon as long as it's not Tatsu. Playable L race, give L his unique abilities, give Celica her unique abilities. Let us play as an Orphe that's like exclusively a long-range mage type character. Let us play as Gajarg, for God's sake. Like, yeah, he has a lightsaber, and lightsaber is a weapon class that you can use, but come on, I want to play as the Kato. And just putting cat ears on my cross it's not worth much. And then, what about the new races? The other group of people is gonna run into different species. Other people stranded on Mira, or just new races entirely. Let them be playable. Give them their own unique abilities. Throw in party members from races that weren't significant to the plot at all in the first game. Like, Manon maybe operates out of a small mech when they're outside of their Skell, and then that small mech Gurren Lagons into a full-size Skell when they do the Skell fighting. Give us a prone party member that's like, barely fights with a weapon and just punches shit. That would be great. All sorts of stuff like that. Get different races, different class trees, and then, in order to incentivize you to do side missions related to that race, your avatar starts out as only a Mimiazome or Mimiazome plus human classes, but in addition to possibly unlocking more character customization options the further you get through the game, the more side missions you do related to certain races, the more races you unlock to make your avatar. So not only can your avatar be any race in terms of appearance, but they could also get the specific stat spread of a given race, they could get access to the classes of a different race, and then, since screw it, they're your avatar who you're going to use in all the broken multiplayer stuff, you can mix and match. You can give them a prone class, but also using Psycho Launchers, which is a Mim-only weapon, or stuff like that. Customization was one of the best parts of X, but it only really applied to your Skells and your avatar on foot. So, let us customize all the characters on foot to the same degree, but also increase the amount you can customize your avatar even beyond how you could do that in the first game. Which I think segues us nicely into Skells, which is keep them as they are for traversal, because that's cool, but make them actually fun in combat, because they were just worse version of XC1 battle system in X, which already had a much better battle system than 1. So, like, on foot, I consider an even better battle system than the 1 in 1. And in Skell, an even worse battle system than the 1 in 1. So, it's not like, oh, 1's battle system is good for the most part, but X's is better. It's, oh, X's is better than the first game when you're on foot, but when you're in a Skell, it's worse than the first game. So it's not like going back to something that, yeah, it's not as good, but it's still something I'm used to and something I'm like. Skell combat is just really boring. There's no two ways about it, it's just kind of boring. So I'm not sure how you could deal with that. Maybe make it more action-based, like give you actual attack buttons or something like that. Let you dodge attacks, which isn't something you could do in any Xenoblade games for the most part. Like, if something swings at you, if you're 10 feet away, it's still going to hit you. There's no actual hitbox. It's just, if you're in range and the enemy's aggroed you, it's going to hit no matter what it looks like it should do. So maybe change that a bit just for Skells, or something like, give them some sort of, whatchamacallit, secondary cooldown, that kind of stuff. Give them better mechanics to make them closer to the ground combat in interestingness. Skells are powerful, but not only are they surpassed by ground combat in the original game, ground combat's just more fun, so there's no reason to use a Skell once you get to a certain point in the game beyond traversal, and that's kind of sad. So I don't really know what you could do with it. There are tons of ideas, but just make Skells cooler. Also, back to the races thing, I guess. The other thing to do would be give each race its own center art, basically racial talent arts, instead of everyone having their own unique talent art, because there were a lot of party members in the original X game. There are going to be even more in a sequel if it does a new Tokyo thing or adds more races. Like, obviously you could take out a few party members from the first game, like make Doug an NPC. Lao is probably not going to be playable. Like, there's at least one person who loves every party member in the first game, but some of which would be less awful to lose than others. We'll just say, like, I don't think anyone would care if Bose wasn't playable or didn't show up at all or got killed off between games. But you could demote some characters to NPC. People will be mad, but it's whatever. But then also you're going to have more party members, so that's going to be a lot to keep track of, and giving everyone a unique talent art would be really hard, especially if you already have them in their class system and give everyone unique arts. So just racial talent arts makes more sense to me. They use TP for different things. Mims get overdrive. Humans, I don't know what humans could get. I'm thinking like some adrenaline-based thing. L could get something, or he poops out his demonic powers. Celica could get the inverse of that, because she seems like very fairy-y or something. I don't know what Nopon could do. Maybe just give them stealing or something like that. I'm trying to think of what, like, Nopon's racial thing would be. Probably stealing, since they're all cheap merchants in the X universe. Orphe would be some sort of hive mind pack tactics thing, where, like, the more Orphe in the area, or they call out more Orphe, or they infect the creature with the ova to make it partially subservient to them, like a high-level, hard-to-resist control, something like that. That would be cool. Cats would probably just get really mad and do more damage, because they're cats. But there are infinite options for this kind of thing, and I really hope they explore that. Lastly, though, let's talk about the multiplayer. X1 had good multiplayer. It was just incredibly limited. There were only a few things you could do. First off, I don't know if they should go in the direction of fully multiplayer exploration, because we know that their new action RPG might be going in that direction, and if they remade X instead of doing a sequel, then they would do something like that. But I think if you wanted to do a follow-up to the X we got, you shouldn't do that. But that doesn't mean that there can't be bigger multiplayer missions where it's like you and your friends actually doing a quest of some sort, or a small story objective, like not one with its own cutscenes and stuff, but one that actually involves you going around exploring, collecting stuff instead of just fighting a few enemies. So you could have areas designed specifically for that, or again, just plop you in areas in the existing continent. Maybe that could be the plot. Team Elma is holding down the fort, but Cross and friends are going to explore to another third region of the world. That's not the NLA, not the Tokyo. That's one that didn't have a city there, but they're looking for like pieces of one or two of the ships, lifehold something, or just going out to explore to find something. So you have not necessarily a full campaign, but a multiplayer mission mode sort of thing that lets you do a lot more stuff than you could before. Then obviously at some point you'd be able to import your Cross from the multiplayer into the single player, just be able to use them as a party member if you so chose. Probably one that doesn't count from either city, so you could use them with whatever group, because they're your self-insert. They don't have to be important to the plot if you do it the way I'm thinking, so they could just kind of be there whenever, just as a person. Stuff like that. I would guess that you couldn't make them more powerful than any of the characters you have in story mode, basically. So your level cap is whatever your highest level character is, and you can't access arts, classes, races, gear, that kind of stuff that the other characters don't have access to, and their level cap would be lowered even more if you tried to bring them into Tokyo when Team Elma was still, like, before the reunion. If you bring them into NLA, they have that cap, but they have the cap of the other party if you bring them to the other, stuff like that. I don't know, I just don't think there should be an Avatar character in the main story of a future X game, because all it did was hurt things and damage what could have been an even better story than the one we got. But I'm amazed they did so much of that in one take. I'm going to drink some water now. That's all I got. Probably not going to be replying to too many comments just because busy week. But yeah, I'd love to see a cool discussion about this kind of thing in the comments. I'm sure plenty of people are going to disagree with me and tell me that this video was very stupid, but I don't really care, because, yeah. Until next time, this is Luxin signing off. We're getting really close to 10K.